Good afternoon. What a thrill and what a beautiful day to be here at Allianz Field. Thank you so much for coming, being part of the State of the Region event. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to see all of you and how great it was that all of our planners got this beautiful sunny day. And what a great venue so that we can actually see this beautiful sunny day. You know, we feel pretty good about Minnesota. We feel pretty good about all the work we're all been doing together. This is in the context of where there's so much misfortune in the world, and I want to acknowledge certainly the tragedy of just even last night and this morning. So our hearts and thoughts are with those families, whether it's Kansas, D.C., or California, or you name it, where they're not as fortunate as we are at this moment. But we are fortunate, and we are also incredibly grateful that we have with us today as our host, and I'm not sure the title, I'll call him the visionary owner of not only Allianz Field, but of the Minnesota United, the Loons, and truly has made his mark on Minnesota. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Bill McGuire to kick us off.
Thank you, Charlie. Oh, excuse me. Pleased to be here and welcome all of you. Thanks for coming. Obviously a beautiful day and a reminder of how we have a lot of beautiful days in the Twin Cities and in this state, and something to keep in mind, including there's a soccer match coming up before long, so you all can get back in the mood. I thought I would throw out a couple of initial ideas to orient you a little bit to where we are and what is actually behind it. And it's not so much soccer, but soccer, professional men's soccer, has existed in this state since 1976, which was the Kicks, and went through a number of variations, each one failing and leading to the next. So you had the Kicks, and we had the Thunder, we had the Stars. Then in about 2013, the Stars were going to fold up, and we decided to step in and keep professional soccer here. And the notion behind that was, during that time of great vibrancy in the Twin Cities and in the state, we all felt that we were an international city. And I said at the time, how can we be an international city and not support the world sport? How can we be a city in a community, broader than a city, but a community of great diversity and interest in promoting and growing from that, and not have the world sport that is followed by so many billions of people. So that was the decision. The team was sustained, and shortly thereafter we began a search for a stadium, because we needed to build a stadium. At the time, the club was playing up in Blaine, which was a nice small facility, great vision by Governor Perpich to set it up, but it also was neither centrally located or frankly had transportation. So a game that appealed to the people throughout the world, that had very few barriers, had great value systems around it, was not available to a lot of people. If you didn't have a car, there wasn't a bus. Too far on the bike, can't walk, etc. And the criteria that we used in looking for this is, we wanted a reasonably central location for the broader community where everyone would have some level of accessibility. And we wanted transportation, all transportation. And here we set, in fact, the next year, the Green Line opened up, but we were looking at a location, 35 acres, including the bus barn, at least 30 of it, nothing but terrible looking asphalt, no sidewalks, nothing, few shops, so to speak, but basically underused, with perhaps the greatest transportation nexus in the Twin Cities. And it was an obvious place. You could also look back in the history. If you study the history of the Midway and go back even into the 1880s, you can see its long-standing transportation engagement, both the trains but also the electric streetcars, some of which were in fact made here, and all of that. So you had a history. The Midway was once maybe thought to be the state capital. I mean, there were lots of things going on. This is a rendering a few years back when we set out to first build the stadium to take advantage of this, and then as part of that, use it as a focus to spur further development and reinvigoration in a dynamic and important community. And this is one of the renders, and in this you can see the stadium, Allianz Field. You can see an early version of the great Calling sculpture out here on the corner. You can see a hotel in the front facing you, abutting on University. You can see an office center, and if you look closely, there's a couple small pavilion restaurants and then another building or two that we've not yet talked about publicly. But the big thing here is that you see I-94, Snelling, and University. Three major hubs, different kinds of transportation available to people. Automobiles, buses. In fact, the rapid transit bus line then came in 2018 or something, or maybe more recently than that, and of course the light rail. The first year the stadium opened, 2019, 14,000 or so fans came and went from this stadium for a game on the light rail. That was our counts, 14,000. That's a stadium that seats 20,000. No major problems, in and out easy, great use of transportation. And then, as we all know, things happened, a lot of unfortunate things. But one thing that has never changed is either the vision of what people would like to see and the potential for what can be when you build around transportation. And what we have talked about, several of us in this room, in fact, in other venues, has been that if you look across the globe, great cities that we all talk about, that we all say, boy, wouldn't it be nice to go there, are in fact built around multiple approaches to transportation and a very vital public transportation. You go to London, you go to Berlin, you go to Copenhagen, you go to Amsterdam, you go to Japan, the list goes on. And they started with strong transportation systems that helped move people of all capabilities around the community. And when those were established, great communities grew around them. So we are at that stage right now. I am looking at what, as of yesterday, amounted to $195 million worth of private investment to go into 4 buildings, and perhaps a few other things that we'll be talking about in this community to take advantage, but to also show everyone that this approach, built around our transportation systems that vitalize communities, is essential for us to pursue and has great opportunities, unparalleled opportunities. And it will be an embarrassment for all of us if we do not take advantage of what we already have and build upon it further. And I will say that people are interested in doing this. We have lots of problems across the world, across the country, across our communities. Opportunity is not one of them. What will hold us back is not some people willing to fulfill what this looks like on that picture. It's our ability to move it forward without trepidation, with some energy and some urgency to get it going rather than talking about it forever. It is now time. We're standing on a site that I believe will set the stage for a lot more to follow, and it's all built around this notion of public transportation. And right here is a true picture that was taken last fall. It was on the early evening of one of the games towards the end of the season, and the Calling had just gone up and had been opened. And you can see Snelling, you can see the light rail in the front, you can see this truly iconic piece of sculpture representing the Audubon Society's Bird of the Year, the loon, the state bird, and a symbol of aspiration, opportunity, inspiration, and all the things we want. And what our job is to now fill in the spaces around it. The McDonald's that you see is obviously on that picture is no longer there. That is a hotel and something else to come. We're there. And so no better group than the people in this room to step up and push things. Push, push, push. Don't take anything less, because the opportunity's there. And so, Charlie, thank you, and thank all your people. Mr. Mayor, all the other people that I'll invariably leave out, thank you for being here, and we look forward to some great times coming up.
Thank you. Thank you. Was that a loon call? That was so brilliant. I promise you, I have not heard those talking points before, but I 100% approve. Really appreciate your greeting and your words of inspiration. You're a gracious host, and it's really an honor that we have this event at this time, at this place. And I think you summed it up so well. This state-of-the-art sports facility is a lot more than concrete and iron or even just great design. It's the bodies, the collective spirit of our region, where public and private sectors kind of come together and create those opportunities. And we know that there's much to look forward to over the years ahead, and I love seeing the diagram, and we really will look forward to witnessing all the development that's happening around this area. I think it's also fitting that that actually where the stadium is, where we are right now, was actually a transit garage built in 1908 for streetcars. So sometimes you're right, we actually return to what was then a transportation center, but ultimately it shows that kind of how urban landscapes can evolve, and they change, but that always comes around those ideas that vitality is at the core. This is an example of how big ideas are happening in this big region, and we all collectively have an opportunity to continue to do big things. I'm thrilled by all the advancements we could tick off, and I'm not talking just about building infrastructure. I know so many of you and some of the things that we've been able to do, and I know that everybody in this room has played an important role in what's happening. And ultimately, the fact that we are here connected as a regional team. This is a State of the Region address. It's more than any one organization or its work can do. I frequently say, while Met Council is a convener of the event, this is not the assessment of the state of Met Council. This is about what we all do together. A region that could not be what it is without all of you today. But before I go any further, I need to acknowledge what many of us are talking about one-on-one. It was indeed not a quiet week, as the federal administration has been advancing its agenda on many fronts. And as an example, the recent federal funding freeze ordered by President Trump and subsequently rescinded, but had that gone through, it would have been really an incredible hardship on the state of Minnesota, and through loss of loans and loss of grants for vital services in our region. So I just want you all to know that as future actions may or may not occur, that we at Met Council really kind of stand with other state agencies to kind of a better idea of what might be an implication, and we will think carefully about how we can best support local communities in whatever happens. So speaking of which, when you think about planning and collaboration, I'm actually really thrilled that within this next month, the Met Council will be adopting its comprehensive regional development guide, which happens only once every 10 years. And we think it will have a really long-lasting effects. Imagine 2050 will include system plans for regional parks, transportation, water resources, and a guidance for land use and housing. And for the first time, a real and solid commitment to our tribal nations and Native communities that will go beyond performative slogans or acknowledgments, but to actual real policy and real actions. So stay tuned. The plan that you'll see that is totally in draft form, and many of you have been commenting on, includes critical issues: climate, equity, natural systems, public health, safety, and well-being. This is a huge undertaking, and as I mentioned, it was developed over a long period of time with your input, and it will rely on all levels of government to implement the vision. So we are going to be challenged as good Minnesotans who would prefer to sit in the back, but I know when it comes to action, it will take all of us, and I'm convinced that we will succeed. More than once, I've been told that Met Council is losing its audaciousness. I love that word. I'm not quite sure what it means. I do know that we're fully capable of being bold. And I know we also will do that boldness together. We are creating a region that is unabashedly equitable and inclusive, where every voice matters. Resilient and dynamic, adapting to challenges with innovation, and sustainable, protecting our natural systems and truly addressing climate change. A healthy and resilient economy and quality of life needs many things to thrive, and I'll start with transit. A robust, interconnected network is foundational element to a vital and affordable region. And as Bill had so aptly pointed out, this site is a perfect example of that principle. The Green Line, the A Line, and beginning in 2027, the Gold Line extension. This means that whether you come from Woodbury, Eden Prairie, Bloomington, Roseville, Minneapolis, or St. Paul, you'll have high quality, reliable, and frequent transit service directly to this spot right here. And with that, even on that, there's still more to come. So Network Now is Metro Transit's world-class transit plan designed to adapt our services to meet the changing needs of the region. And this includes expanding service more than 35% through improving frequencies on as many as 60 bus routes, and restoring service on light rail and bus rapid transit to every 10 minutes. This will result in increasing access to jobs by 25% compared to pre-pandemic service. That will improve service for low-income residents and communities of color, and ultimately result in a reduction in carbon emissions with increased ridership. We are actually opening 3 metro lines this year, and this is the first time, I think, ever we've had more than one grand opening and ribbon cutting in 1 year. The Gold, B, and E lines that will connect many of our region with fast, frequent, and reliable all-day service. We have introduced new micro-transit services that are already operating, and I'm hearing stories today about the success of the service in Roseville and Woodbury. And we have great aspirations to connect even more communities to our transit system. Now, this plan was not developed overnight. We have been and will continue to work with our community and business leaders, policymakers at all levels in all corners of the region, and we need all of you to help make this vision a reality. I have to mention safety. Now, we recognize the critical importance of safety embedded as a core focus of our service. That's why we're acting with urgency to put more people in more places, increasing our focus on cleaning and maintenance, and strengthening partnerships with community groups who can enhance and supplement this work. So we're already seeing a difference. Last year, our targeted efforts brought expanded coverage of our system, and reduced crime, particularly serious crime. And we've proved that intentional actions actually do create real change. And I want to just take a minute and thank those legislators who are here who helped make that possible. These efforts have resulted in ridership increasing, demonstrating that people actually are making choices to return to transit as they familiarize themselves to our improved post-pandemic system. And then there's water. Water is more than a resource. It's described as life itself. Well, thanks to the shared regional vision supporting our precious water resources, we are actually ahead of the curve. And many view us as a national model. When we look at devastation around the country, and we don't have to look past Los Angeles, we recognize the critical role water plays in the importance of thoughtful, effective strategies in confronting climate change challenges in particular. So we all need water. Thank you. We all need water, but we all need it in the same way around the country. We just have a difference between state by state. Every state is different. The challenges are met in different ways. But we know that that's why it's important that we, as a region, work together to ensure that we get positive results. We know that communities play key roles in sustainability, and the quality of this precious resource is as important as its abundance. We can never take that for granted. So building our future together, the foundation of all this work is based on long-range planning and community development. Regional planning is collaboration with local communities, and it's key to our thriving region. It always has been. And as complex as it is, the answer actually is quite simple. Long-range planning makes good sense. Thinking ahead produces better results. And just charging ahead without a vision, goals, or plans, it doesn't work out right. And I won't give you a tour around America, but I think we're very fortunate. We don't act that way. Something new we're doing is working with local governments. We work with townships, cities, and counties, but now incorporating tribal nations. It allows our region to grow and change in ways that will be more affordable, more sustainable. At the end of the day, the work we do may not seem very glamorous, and I assure you, on most days, it is not. But it is incredibly nuanced, it's multifaceted, and often I think at Met Council and with all of you, we find ourselves in the center of conflict. And yet, that's actually when the really important work gets done. That's the time we need to put Minnesota nice aside and actually confront real issues together and hash it out, and we do that, and we've done that. So finally, I want us at the Met Council and the work we do actually to mean something. And it has been my honor and my mission as chair to articulate empathy and resolve in facing problems that truly make a difference. And of course, no one does this alone, and we are incredibly blessed to have an amazing staff at Met Council and an actual remarkable, I will point you, a remarkable group of council members. So if I know most of you are here, raise your hand or stand or wave and be recognized. No single community can transform a region alone, and our strength lies in collaboration, as I've mentioned, but also our shared commitment, our unwavering belief that together we can build something extraordinary. So I'm proud of the role Met Council plays in pushing our region forward, just as I know you are proud of the role your individual community or organization plays and doing just the same. So thanks to all of you for being here with us today to hear some really great conversation, and thank you mostly for your commitment for this incredible future. So thank you so much. And now we're going to get to some real substance of the day facilitated by our own regional administrator, Ryan O'Connor, who's done amazing work as our leader at Met Council, who is in the room with you and others getting it done. So Ryan, take it away.
In the back, good afternoon. There you go. We're still here. We're still here. It's a pleasure to get a chance to come up here and spend a few moments with you today as a part of a panel. My name is Ryan O'Connor. I'm the regional administrator here at the Metropolitan Council. Our panelists, please come up and join, which they are already doing. There is a part here where they don't need a lot of introduction. As you look at this panel, I think you will immediately recognize them as people you work with, you work hard with, they work for you as we try to build this region together. And as I listen to the chair's speech and Dr. McGuire, and I take a moment to always remember to look around the room at who's here with you, who shows up for moments like this. It's a reminder in the work that we do together. It's a reminder we're only as good as the people sitting on our left and our right. It's a reminder that we make this region better every day for those that'll come after us. And it's also a moment to say thank you for the service that you choose to put in. There are many polls on what you could spend your time doing. There are many different things that can bring you different levels of joy in your life, and you choose to be here. And through moments of agreement and moments of conflict and moments of challenge and moments of opportunity, if you remember one thing from me today, it's thank you. I want to briefly introduce our panelists and then get right into the panel. Starting immediately on my left, he was up here once already, Dr. Bill McGuire, owner of MNUFC. We're not going to do a chant, but we could do that later. He can run us through that. Minnesota's professional soccer team and former chief executive officer of United Health Group from 1991 through 2006. I know many of you have had the opportunity to work with Dr. McGuire in different capacities through philanthropy work and community work throughout our region as we've gone. Next, we have Mayor Melvin Carter, the mayor of the city of, St. Paul's mayor. See, he used to have an office right above mine, and so I knew when he needed me because I would hear the stomp on the floor. So I have to do that a little. A fourth-generation St. Paul resident, Mayor Carter, as you all know, leads with an unapologetic equity agenda. Since taking office in 2018, he has many accomplishments that include raising the city's minimum wage, tripling free programs in rec centers, eliminating late fines in public libraries, establishing an affordable housing trust fund, expanding immigrant and refugee support resources. I could go on. He'll talk about some of this as we go. What I will say is, anytime you see him, he's always ready to engage and talk about the issues that matter most, and he's someone whose brain is always turning. Next, we have Dr. Kate Bean, who currently serves as the executive director of the Minnesota Museum of American Art. As the executive director, she's leading the museum into a new era with the completion of construction on the museum's facility in downtown St. Paul, with expanded programming opportunities and reach, and with deepened engagement with diverse artists and communities. Dr. Bean has also been deeply involved in work with the Metropolitan Council that builds on the words that the chair spoke about today about our relationship and commitment to our work with Indigenous and Native communities. She has been at the front of that work throughout the past year and beyond, and I deeply appreciate her service. And finally, Aline Churumoff this is a long title we got today, at the Federal Reserve, where she is the Chief Human Resources Officer of the Human Resources and Inclusion Division, Senior Vice President of the Learning Management Support Office, and Senior Vice President of the Community Development and Engagement Division, which includes the Center for Indian Country Development. We all want that business card before we leave. But in all seriousness, what it means is she is deeply involved in the works internal to the Federal Reserve as well as external across our communities. And I'm sure you've had the opportunity to work with Aline, whether at the Met Council as a former chair, whether at Hennepin County or the state of Minnesota. She represents many of the different entities here today in the many roles that she has had. So after doing those introductions and being reminded that I have things I need to continue to do in my career so someone could read a bio like that, I want to ask a question. I'll just start here on the end and we'll work our way through. What emerging trends or ideas do you see as most important to our region today? And how do we work together across sectors and jurisdictions to ensure a prosperous and connected future for everyone who calls this region their home? Dr. McGuire.
Big question. Is on? You hear?
You're on.
Thank you. To me, it's the creation of opportunities. And I believe opportunities grow from within communities. You have to maximize education, family, work, and then just build on those. And so our role, I think, is across all levels and in all agendas is to, in fact, create opportunities in our communities and grow from there. And that's certainly how we look at this here. Obviously, you need to work with all of the folks and link the dots. So,
Thank you. Mayor Carter.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today and for inviting us here. One, welcome to St. Paul. Two, go Loons. Three, certainly reflect the things or reiterate the things that Charlie said about just it being a busy week. A lot of things going on, a lot of things capturing our attention. You did miss out the fact that the lineup for the Minnesota Yacht Club Music Festival was announced this week. So I figured that was coming later. And four, I apologize for the terrible weather we're having. Our team is working, doing everything we can to make sure that the ice sculptures stay in place for the Winter Carnival so that you can have a great time outdoors in St. Paul this weekend. I appreciate the question. As Charlie was talking, you said, Charlie, that no one community can transform a region by itself. In truth, no one community can transform their own community by themselves, because so many of the things that we work on in St. Paul, our priorities are the same as what you just described. Public safety, making sure that people can have, of all income levels and at every stage of life, can have housing that they can rely on, building the reliable transportation infrastructure so that we can be connected to one another and connected to opportunity in our community, and ensuring that we have an inclusive economy. All of those things, particularly as our metro area grows, all of those things are things that are interconnected really well. We talk about on our team a lot about how the challenges we're facing work together really, really well. And so the only way to answer those challenges is to figure out how to work together across jurisdictions, the lines between, wards in the city. I see Ward 1 Councilmember Anika Bowie here. Thank you so much for being here. The lines between wards in the city, the lines between cities and the county, the lines between counties and the region are really just all imaginary lines that somebody put on a piece of paper at some point in time. But we know that people cross those lines to go to work. They cross those lines to get home. They cross those lines to do stuff that we'd rather them not do in our community. They cross those lines all of the time. So we have to figure out how to cross those lines. I think our region has a really profound future ahead of us right now that we can access only by navigating what we have to acknowledge as rocky roads underfoot on a number of things, right? We have answers to continue to solve regarding public safety. We have challenges to continue to resolve around housing and making sure that people who are unhoused in our community are being able to access support. We have answers that we have to resolve around fentanyl and opioid abuse crisis. We have answers to be able to solve around that. But I'll tell you, I think the strongest trend that I see really is people across jurisdictions, across just the traditional boundaries, figuring out how to work together, one city to the next, one city to the county, the city to the county, and across our county and around, and across different categories of community life to address those challenges, and that's how I think we'll get there.
Just a quick follow-up, Mayor. In the run-up conversations we had talking about some of this, you were recently in a conversation. I want to go back to the fentanyl piece for a second, because you said something striking. Can you talk a little bit about the recent convening you had with some of your peers and the need for us to think outside of hoping someone else could solve this idea for us?
Yeah, we were talking about fentanyl. You didn't warn me there was going to be a follow-up question. But, there's a saying among mayors that good mayors borrow, great mayors steal. and I always tell my colleagues I'm the most, of all the kind of mayors in the country, I'm the most proficient stealer of good ideas from other cities. And I take that job very, very seriously, by the way. But I asked a room full of mayors recently, like, what are you excited about? What's working? What is what is moving the needle for you on the battle against fentanyl? And not only did not one person was not one person able to say, oh, this is the solution that we put in place, everybody should do this thing. It turned into a challenge fest where everybody just by contrast was really worried about the exact same thing. And so what it says to us is, we're not going to be able to look across the country or across the river or across anything to find those solutions. One of the things that we do whenever it's time to answer a difficult question is go back to the source, to go back to community, bring community members together. And we're very much looking forward to doing that same type of process that built our community first public safety framework in the first place in St. Paul, centered around fentanyl and how we build local solutions for the rest of the country.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Bean, emerging trends or ideas you see as important, how we get there.
Hami Takayepi. Hello, my relatives. It's good to see you all here today. I'm nervous about trends. Trends don't last. And coming from a community of people that, I grew up and during a time period where Dances with Wolves came out, and we were trendy all of a sudden, and people wanted to wear our jewelry, and all of a sudden realized that there was a different way of interpreting our histories and our stories, and wanted to tell our stories for us. And we're more than a trend. And I think it's important to think about what are the things that are sustainable, and how do we interact and engage with one another in a way that makes sense and is respectable. And the Met Council has had the opportunity to do that, working with Native folks in the last year. We had a call where we were asked to advise on a land acknowledgement, and the first meeting we said, no, we're not going to advise on a land acknowledgement. We know where we are. We know who we are. But if you tell us who you are and educate us and we form a relationship, we can come up with some commitments. And it's that sort of understanding of moving away from the ideological to the practical, to the tangible of what do we actually do, that I think is increasingly important. Whether you call it DEI or DEAI or DEIJ or whatever you want to throw in there, this work has been happening for over 500 years, and it's not going anywhere. And it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that times like this that we're living in can be incredibly difficult for those of us who are getting the door shut on us. But we've lived through worse, and we're going to continue to act as stewards of this land. And when I think about who the Met Council is, when I initially interacted with the Met Council, I had no idea. What is the Met Council? So it's so its purview is so large. And what I came to understand is you're a connector. And that's the kind of work I'm really interested in. How do we build connections across divisions, across space, across time, across culture? How do we get to the very real understanding of who are we all and how do we live in relationship with one another and with the universe? And so understanding how we have respect for the waterways together, how we have respect for the land together is increasingly important. I recently this last year I served on the State Emblem and State Flag Redesign Commission. I don't know whether this is a popular crowd to say that or not, but I did. And the flag is growing on me. I love the seal. But it's got a loon. It's great. The big conversation was, should it be a black eyes or red eyes? And that was interesting. But what I learned was that the one thing that everybody in this bipartisan committee of people who really didn't agree about a lot, well, the one thing we agreed on was including the landscape was important. Including the water was important. And that's what brought us together. And so, thinking about what is that commonality, how do we build relationships, that very tangible, how do we do that, rather than an ideological sort of idea of we just want everyone included. What does that mean? actually helping people understand what they can each do in their everyday life, within their everyday work day. What is something that each of us can do? That's what's most important.
How do you find the energy and resilience every day to continue on in that work as you go about engaging with groups you've either engaged with before or new groups?
Well, I have a 2.5-year-old.
That doesn't give energy as someone who not that long ago went through that.
I guess the point is, regardless of whether I have the energy or not, I do it. Most of the time, I come from a family of activists and organizers and educators, and I'm simply, we're all here, we're all a tiny blip in the timeline of the world. And understanding that and having humility in that, having, that humbleness is incredibly important. Understanding that we can only do so much, giving ourselves grace. The last week has been incredibly difficult for us all, especially as a nonprofit leader. And so understanding and giving grace and mercy, a word we all learned a lot about this week, I think is incredibly important so that we can really be in relationship with one another and just be real.
Thank you. Aline.
Thank you. So I feel like it's tough to go last on this. This is really.
You're up to it.
I kind of want to build on some themes, but first I have to offer my disclaimer that these are my views alone and not the views of the Minneapolis Fed or the Federal Reserve System. So I really thinking just starting from the end of the panel coming this way, really thinking about opportunity and access to opportunity, how we come together, work across lines, how we actually build genuine relationships. I think those are all absolutely critical things that we should be thinking about. And I think as a region, we're actually pretty blessed with and have a lot of track record of coming together and working together. What's been on my mind recently, I think Charlie mentioned this earlier, is just the wildfires in Southern California really reminding me about kind of resiliency. I think about resiliency in a number of different ways. It can obviously be a personal thing, but also as a region. We think about the systems that support resiliency, and a lot of those systems, Met Council is responsible for a number of them, local units of government and community as you come together and think about resiliency in your own communities. And maybe this was a reflection of my work at the Fed. I also think about resiliency at the individual household level. How are our households, our individual families faring, what does their economic resiliency look like in this moment? We do a lot of work on low and moderate income members of our communities. We think about how they're dealing with inflation, how they're managing things like housing affordability. And I feel like one of the things that we've been really pretty good at least in the last several years, is trying to build more housing and trying to think about what are the systems that we need to put in place to support resiliency, because it's not going to happen on its own. We do need to come together and think about what does the next 50, 100 years look like if it's our water systems. St. Paul has this amazing redundancy in its water sources, both from groundwater as well as surface water, and that comes in handy. That's going to be, I think, useful in the future as we think about depletion of some of those critical infrastructure sources. But just going back to that, as you were just mentioning, kind of the layers of how each of us come together and what do we ultimately bring, and whether or not it's the water resources, transit, community. I think that's kind of how that piece maybe all coming together, and maybe it's in a seal or something like that, but just thinking about ultimately it's going to need intentionality from all of us as we think about how to build resiliency.
Thank you. And Aline, I'll ask this question to you first, but then I'll open it up to any other panelists who want to answer it. So as we sit in a room here today with individuals who represent state government, regional government, individual municipalities, we constantly are reading about or thinking about ways in which those boundaries that are artificial in many ways can be used to challenge us or try to draw distinctions in our work. Oh, we're special for this reason, so we like what you're doing with the hole over here, but don't worry about us. Like this would impact us in a different way. How do we continue to work through the important need to both see things on an individual level while also balancing it with the need to move forward as a collective?
Yeah, I mean, I think this kind of comes back a little bit to the question that you asked Mayor Carter about the fentanyl crisis, right? It's really about, and I was actually talking to somebody about this in the audience before, of what do we do in this moment, or in a moment of crisis in our community? And unfortunately, I think we've experienced that a number of times here over the past many years. And ultimately, we have our own individual role, but all of us are in roles in this moment for a reason. And being able to have the vision and the drive to see across those differences to try to come together, I think is really, ultimately really important. And I think what can drive change is how do we get to yes? And I think that's maybe we should start conversations with that. We know that this is a problem. How are we going to get to yes?
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I've seen a lot lately, our museum, as you said, just finished a $14.5 million expansion project, and we opened our doors for the first time in a long time to tripling our gallery space and highlighting a lot of the diverse representation of the state of Minnesota within our building. And the organization's been around since the 1890s. A lot of people were asking us, well, how can you put these different artists in relationship with one another in the same exhibit? How do you do that? How do you show different cultures across time and culture and family and community? And our response is you just do it. And what I've seen is I see families coming into our museum who all have very different political views, very different experiences, very different perspectives, but they're all able to find something. And they find a connection and they can talk about it. And they're inspired through art. And art has this incredible power to heal and unite people. And understanding how art, just like sports, is more than entertainment. It's a lifeline. It's integral for all of us in our everyday, and there is a teaching within it that shows us how to be in relationship with one another and how to connect.
One of the recognitions that our team, I mentioned earlier, our sort of capacity for bringing people together and trying to generate ideas together. One of the core values that's lied in is our recognition, and I say this all the time, that every decision human beings ever make are made to benefit the decision maker. And if we want a broader set of policies and investments that benefit a broader set of people, the only logical conclusion is to bring a broader set of people into the decision-making process. I think we have a lot of spaces where we look at, we just swore in a new president on the same day as we celebrated Martin Luther King Day. And we look at people like Martin Luther King and see them as like these selfless individuals. I don't think they were selfless. I think we miswrite history when we call someone like Martin Luther King selfless. What I think Martin Luther King did was he thought about himself and his family and his children and his community immediately, in the immediate sense, deeply enough to come to the conclusion that he shared in one of his famous speeches, that we are all interconnected in this web of interconnectedness, and that what impacts one directly impacts all indirectly. I think that's something that's really critical for us to understand, and it's a question that's being called literally right now as we determine as a country whether we're all in it together or whether we're all in it separately. And I think that's how coalition work works. I think that's how social justice politics have to work, not by asking folks to just suspend your needs and focus on someone else's needs for now because their needs are bigger than yours or deeper than yours or more important than yours. But no, think more deeply about your needs. Think about, as we've had conversations about like banning the box in Minnesota, folks, I remember having a conversation with somebody who said, I don't think those folks deserve it. I said, well, you can think whatever you think about that or not. What I think is that when my mother or my daughter stands at a bus stop, they deserve to stand there next to someone who feels hopeful about their future. As we talk about the role of new Americans in our community right now, we've had to reiterate over the last couple of weeks that our St. Paul Police Department, our St. Paul Fire Department, there is absolutely no employee of city government who's responsible for enforcing federal immigration policy. And that's important for a whole bunch of reasons for them, but it's also important for us because one fact is true, and that is if your immigrant neighbor is afraid to call 911 when their house is on fire, then your house might be on fire too. And so ultimately all I'm saying is as I think about what St. Paul needs, it is really clear to me that Golden Valley Mayor Ross Harmon is here with us. It is really clear to me that we can't get the housing stability that we need in St. Paul if folks in Golden Valley can't have access to housing. I tell folks all the time, I only care about keeping the St. Paul side of the Mississippi River clean. They look at me and say, that doesn't make any sense. That's a good point. It doesn't make any sense. And so I actually think our compassion for one another might be artificial until it's rooted in that really deep understanding that we exist together in a region because we cannot, it's incapable, it's impossible for us to exist in solitude as strongly as we can together.
Complicated answer, I guess, and I don't know that I would add anything to three broad positions that I think are very well articulated. I probably come at a lot of this a little bit differently, given a background in both medicine and private business, as well as quite great opportunities to have the privilege of participating in many philanthropic endeavors involving the Twin Cities, a lot of which have involved education and art, as an example, and community spaces. As many in this room that interface with me on some of these projects recent years know that I am easily frustrated with some things, and one of the things that I find frustrating is not an issue of disparate values. I actually think our communities have a lot of shared values. They may get expressed differently, but at their core, they are there. But we are easily divisible or allow ourselves to get that way. We too frequently listen to ourselves or our own little silo rather than opening up the outside. I remember years ago when I left medicine and was in business, the challenge of getting people to stop talking to each other and to talk up to the people that they're trying to serve. It's a disease because it's easier. So you use the lingo, you use all of these things. So I think this whole idea of reaching across things, across boundaries, across silos, across different departments, different regions, is something we have to do a lot better job of accomplishing. And with that, we have to have a greater sense of urgency. Charlie well articulated the importance of planning and vision. Again, I think planning and vision is there. I mentioned earlier the National Sports Center in Blaine. Governor Perpich had great vision. That said, in my view, that is a somewhat wasted asset. We have not supported it to the level that we could to do a lot of things for a lot more people in our communities than we've even accomplished. And it is nonetheless nationally known and respected. So when we have these visions, we need to have the courage to step through and say, okay, we've studied it, time to move on, and let's get going. And they may be approached differently, but we have to do it. And I know Mayor Carter and I recently had a discussion on a challenge that was before us, and he, I think, appropriately said, let's not have perfection be the enemy of good. You know, worry about this one little thing when the big issue was here, given all the needs, all the opportunities that we're meeting. So I do think this collaborative view, but more of an acceptance, make sure we're listening to each other, and then let's get on with it, especially when we have opportunities, not waste them.
So we're gonna do the rapid fire popcorn to bring us home. In a couple of words, what will keep you curious or energized? You can do and energized. Curious or energized in 2025? Dr. McGuire.
This project. Great opportunity, and it's there. And I do want to point out, I forgot to mention earlier, for those of you that follow it, you might have noticed this week Amtrak released its results. Ridership up 15% over a year ago. Total ridership, I think 33.5 million or thereabouts, higher than pre-pandemic. Public transportation, a vision, and they reached out and said, okay, it's tough. COVID killed us. We're going to invest. They opened up some new lines. Charlie talked about some new lines. And they said, we're going to create a feeling of safety. And I will tell you from residents in this area that we all know have been troubled by this. The data on crime is not the issue. It is perception. Do you feel safe? And we have to overcome that, and we know we can do that. So I don't know.
A good piece
veered
to add.
off.
It will keep us energized
great.
throughout this year as a huge
Shows
part.
you're on track.
Mayor Carter, Curious and Energized 2025.
Yes, I've everything that I already said, fentanyl, all of those things. One thing that I haven't really talked about yet is our need to is our visions to reimagine our downtowns and all the opportunity that exists to build. I really fundamentally believe to build thriving, vibrant, exciting downtowns of the future, starting on this side of the river.
Amen to that. Dr. Bean.
Well, my answer is probably a little obvious, art. I think that art just has this amazing ability to heal and unite us, and I'm really excited and inspired by the amazing artists that we have in Minnesota and the diverse representation that we have and the ways in which we can find these unexpected connections across community and these ways to get to know one another in ways that we have no idea until we actually see that, elders in different communities make baskets. And have different processes, and where does that material come from? Oh, well, let's talk about ash trees and the emerald ash borer, and all of these different connections that we see that are important to all of us, and there's so much that can be said.
Aline, final word.
I was thinking, I really appreciate living here and thinking about all the people that are in this room, the thoughtful leaders who spend a lot of time thinking about what makes our region great and strong and brings vitality. And so I feel like we have a long history of being able to do hard things together, and I'm optimistic about our ability to keep doing that in 2025. Thank
It's
you.
a great place to end it. Can you please give a round of applause to the panel?